Hello, everybody out there in YouTube land. This is your T-shirted historian, and I've got one viewer, and it's probably just me. So, I guess we're taking it easy this morning. Anyway, kind of flying a little bit solo today. My co-host Grim is out, but he is feeling better from what I've gotten, and everything's looking pretty good. So I wrangled up a couple of co-hosts kind of last minute, but I think you'll agree that they are some awesome dudes. We got Joe from Biggest Geekus. Then I have Kringe.
Hello. I changed my picture since he's not here.
There you go. There you go.
Oh,
and
right.
yeah, and in case anybody was missing him, there we go. So now we have a Grim stand-in.
We got two Grims now.
Yeah, we do. We have two Grims. Anyway, I've got two viewers now. Hey, awesome. We're doing good. All right. Well, we're going to try to keep it to an hour, but, we go over a little bit. That's all right. Normally, I would probably start this at a different time, but we actually picked this time because this is what is best for Grim. Because him being over in England, I didn't want to put any extra, stress on his time or his, body, as it were. But I know it's early in the morning for a lot of folks, and a lot of folks can't make it because they're at work and everything, and I do apologize for that, guys. But you can always catch us on the replay. Oh, we've got Ironcaster. Yeah, time to preach about Strahd. Yes. This is the villains, our villains visited episode, where we're going to talk about villains. We're going to talk about everything from your minor peon villain that you can feel good about killing, to all the way up to your super duper major league arch villain who run everything and were the masterminds behind the entire plot in your TTRPGs. So I guess we probably need to start kind of at the bottom. And this kind of coincides with some news I just got. The Goblin Slayer TTRPG has been moved back to July 19th. For delivery date in the United States. I'm kind of looking forward to that. I know Grim has ordered a copy of it, and so have I. I want to see what they're going to do. I have a feeling it's going to be D6 based, since they're always throwing D6 in the anime.
What game was that again?
Goblin Slayer.
Oh,
Well, it's
okay.
probably going to be D6 because the biggest RPG in Japan is D6 based.
There you go. Which is
I think
interesting.
Sword World or something like that.
Yeah, that's the one that Lodos War was based on.
Yeah.
I still
it's
need to catch that
basically-
anime. I heard it was.
It's basically
I'm-
the official Lodos RPG.
Joe, you've never played Lodos? You've never seen Lodos War?
Oh, Lotus War I have seen.
Okay.
Goblin Slayer I have not.
Yeah, you do. I tell you what. Watch the first episode. If you can get past the first episode, you'll probably enjoy the rest of the series.
I'm not a big anime fan. I like
Yeah.
some.
You've
But-
probably seen more than me.
Hey, what's going on, lovely Sherry? Nice to see you. I didn't know lovely Sherry is a D&D geek. I hope she is. That'd be so cool, man. I'd love to have lovely Sherry on the show someday. to
Everybody
talk
likes
about.
villains.
That's true. Everybody does like villains.
I
And
like them to die.
yeah, well, as I always tell people, it's like, hey, you are the villain in somebody's story. Because it's true, right?
I know there's people that don't care for me, but villain, I don't know.
I think it depends on the story with that.
Yeah.
If I'm the villain in somebody's story, that somebody is got a screw loose.
Well, I know from my Twitter interactions, I'm definitely the villain in somebody's story.
I sure am.
Yeah.
Dice Goblin Sherry? Hey. That's a great idea.
I mean, people have complained about me in the same breath they complained about Grim and Pundit. So I'm definitely a villain to somebody.
True. I don't have that level of hater yet.
I didn't think I did. I'm like a sub 800 account, but people have attacked me.
Well, I'm over 1,000, but apparently I don't say the right things to get that kind of hate and vitriol. So I guess
No.
I'm doing okay.
You're doing better than me.
Yeah, I suppose it's just because I don't stick my foot in every thing that
And
Just
that's
keep
why
your problem
I'm a
out.
better villain than you.
Yeah, I would agree. You're a better villain than me. But I don't know. Is Vlad Steakums a better villain than you?
Oh yeah, he starts so much shit.
Yeah, he does.
He is a proactive villain.
Yeah.
Well,
he-
all
he's-
I had to do was talk about orcs.
Yeah. That's absolutely true. Well, I mean, we might as well go ahead and talk about that. I guess at the bottom you got your like entry level villain, which would oppose a PC. And I guess this is kind of like what you'd get at first level or lower levels or lower abilities beginning of the game, which would be like, common thugs, low hit dice monsters, things like
Orcs,
that.
goblins, kobolds, stuff like that.
Yeah, orcs, goblins, kobolds. I'll be honest, orcs and goblins I consider to be kind of like disposable cannon fodder villains.
Generally, yeah.
Yeah. If I have some kind of a decent kind of overarching plot going where, like it's an actual orc invasion or something, there will be some slightly higher level orcs in the bunch who are like, sub chiefs and, things like that. And maybe like an overlord type. Because in my opinion, I kind of see orcs as well, this is probably going to be considered problematic by people, but Tolkien said it first. He considered them to be a little bit like Mongolish or Mongoloid, and I don't think he meant in the terms of how they look physically, but I think he meant as a
Behavior.
unit structure.
The Huns, the Ravening Horde from the east.
Yeah. I don't think he meant to equate them as any kind of a actual race of people. He meant their power structure.
They're the
probably more
barbarians
like
that shook the gates of Rome. That's basically how he treated them.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I like to use them too. They're a force that lives outside of civilization who are forced to raid because either where they live, they can't grow anything, or they can't grow enough to sustain their numbers. So they have to subsist on raiding as well as whatever crops and stuff they can grow. And, you could also think of them as nomads in the same way that the ancient Mongol herdsmen would move around their plains and stuff.
Yeah. I always consider it a temperament thing. They don't have the temperament to sit and make their own stuff, so they take everybody else's.
Yeah,
By
there's
force.
always that too.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is I don't know if it's canonical as far as Tolkien goes, but at least in the movies we saw orcs producing weaponry and armor and stuff like that. But of course, it looked crude and was pretty much just made to kill.
Sure. Wasn't really artistic
Yeah.
in any
Which-
sense, really.
Yeah. And in comparison, we have the actual Mongol people who were able to create these massively powerful bows that were pretty much like the cutting edge of bow technology at the time.
I've used them. They're not easy to pull back.
Mm-mm. And they could use them from horseback too, which is amazing. I mean, some people have said that they're comparable in power to the great Welsh longbow of the period.
As someone who's fired both, I wouldn't say that.
Okay, what would you say?
I would say the longbow is a bit more powerful.
Really?
mean,
Okay.
I think it's a composite bow or a horn bow. I mean, the benefit is you could fire it faster, and you're on horseback. You're not using a longbow on horseback.
No.
Not from what you, like you said, Kringe, you've fired it yourself, but even the folks I've watched fire it, I can't imagine being able to maneuver a horse while putting your whole back into a
No, you're just
longbow.
it's just the bow is huge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think the only bows bigger are the Japanese. What is it, the Yumi?
Daikyu.
That might be one of the names for it. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's the name I was thinking.
Where the handle is situated more towards the bottom.
Yeah, and you pull it back all the way behind. You pull it back farther.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know that those bows were comparably as powerful just because of the materials they were using. But I don't know. I'm not a bow expert. I wouldn't even say I'm a sword expert. I'm trained in the sword, but I'm not like, I'm not I'm not Scala Grim or any of those guys who study that stuff all the time.
Nope. I have a degree in watching kung fu movies and
there you go.
And movies with knights and armor and all that. Yeah,
I'm an actual archer. I own bows. I've fletched my own arrows.
That's cool, Green Gay. You're a cooler guy than I always give you credit for.
So I guess if we're forming a D&D party, I'd be the ranger.
There you go. I guess I'd
That's
be the
groovy.
swords guy. Ironcaster says that Fantasy Flight Games' proprietary system they use for Star Wars and Genesis has a 3-tier enemy system: minions, adversaries, and nemesis to reflect difficulty they each present. Okay, and
That's pretty close to the way 4th edition did it too, didn't it?
yeah.
I don't know
think
the Final Fantasy games system because I tend to not like their RPGs.
well, 4th edition I think had like minions and bosses basically.
Minions weren't one-hit kills.
Yeah.
right.
And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, every single lower level critter slash demi-human, humanoid, whatever you want to call them, thing that you run into to kill, including other humans, like thugs, bandits, and that kind of stuff like that. I understand that they probably have real fleshed out stories. Like, oh yes, this is someone's son, and somebody cares about them and is going to miss them when they die, and all this sort of stuff.
Well, then they shouldn't have attacked my paladin, should they?
Yeah, exactly. I feel like you should be able to feel cathartically okay with killing these kind of things, because that's kind of what they're there for. Like, that's why I call them like cannon fodder villains.
Well,
Sure.
even D&D has its tier of villains. You have the kobolds and goblins are your zero tier. Then you have orcs, hobgoblins, and then above that gnolls, bugbears, ogres. Then you start getting into the giants. So there are tiers of villains.
Mm-hmm.
It's more stratified. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just they never codified it with terms. But
Mhm.
at
Yeah.
first level, you're not getting a frost giant thrown at you.
No.
Unless your DM hates you.
Or your DM has other plans for you, like unless you have a stupid party. I mean, I have been known to throw stuff at parties that was just way over leveled, but usually it's a case of I want the PCs to stop and have a conversation with the villain instead of trying
That's
to
one
hack
of
it
the
up.
downsides to sandbox campaigns.
Yeah, well, I like sandboxing, but
No, I'm nothing
unfortunately,
against it. I'm just saying that's one of the downsides. You could run into a great worm at first level.
yeah,
Well,
that's true.
it depends on how you do the encounter setup. I mean, even if you just rolled it, you should be able to give the PCs enough of I can't remember the word I'm trying to think of, but telegraph to them.
Mhm.
That's the word. You telegraph it to them, and maybe they pick up on it, maybe they don't, and they don't figure out that they need to run or parlay instead of just pull out their swords.
Yeah, if your PCs are going to run into a great worm and they're only first level, there should be some like obvious signs that there's been a great worm in the area. Burnt, melted structures, trampled down trees, giant, huge ass footprints, and that sort of stuff. I mean,
A sign saying "Beware."
yeah, yeah.
Tribute paid ahead.
Yeah, PCs, or even, a couple of, lucky survivors who are, horribly burned, who, will tell your PCs, is like, don't go any further. There's a great worm.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And if your PC's still persistent trying to find this thing, well, that's what you have the intelligence of monsters written out for. Because a great worm, is going to see like a bunch of first level PCs, either a snack, fodder, or just as an amusement, I think.
Or it's just not even going to bother because it has better things to do.
Yeah, maybe. It may just ignore them completely. Like, what are you doing?
A lot of people want the spectacle of a dragon in their opening campaign, but it's really hard to pull off because once a dragon gets involved, it's a fucking dragon.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, you're kind of left with maybe it incinerates most of the village and then takes off, and then your perhaps your mega plot is to eventually find and avenge your dead village mates.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, a dragon is a cutscene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing with people. I've played games in Ravenloft where at first level we ran into the domain's Dark Lord. I'm like, what the hell are we gonna do?
Yeah.
Mhm.
We're gonna watch.
What am I gonna do against Aslan?
Right.
I'm a first level cleric. I can't do anything.
Yeah, and that brings up an interesting An interesting point. To me, I want to say that Strahd from Ravenloft was probably the coolest villain that I ever read in a published adventure back when I was young. So
He was probably the first complex villain that D&D
Yeah.
had.
yeah, this was a villain you could actually sit down and talk to, and you could kind of sit there and understand his motivations and
Sure.
why he does the things.
I mean, because before him, you had what? You had Frost Giant Lords or whatever they were, the Cave of the Frost Giants, the Fire Giant Tyrants, all that. They didn't really have.
Yeah, the
Personalities.
drow weren't particularly deep.
no,
No, they were like,
deep
oh,
in the
we're just-
ground, but
We're just going to kill you.
yeah,
Strahd
And
was
I
the
mean-
first really serious, complex villain that they had. Because if you look what he's based on romantic literature.
Mhm.
Like the actual genre, not romance.
Right. You had the slave lords, which was a great series of books. And they all had little miniature backstories, kind of for each slave lord, but they didn't go into anything deep or complex.
And
I mean, I
also,
guess you
their
could.
little mini backstories didn't drive the plot.
No.
Strahd, especially Ravenloft, especially the Dark Lords drove the plot.
Hmm.
I mean,
Especially in the box set.
yeah, Ravenloft. The perfect way to describe Ravenloft to someone is you're trapped in someone else's hell.
Yeah.
So
'Cause it was.
anything, it's their story. You're just kind of the extras.
Hey, Channel 66. Good to see you, man.
Except Soth. Soth just kind of hung out till they kicked him out.
Yeah. Soth is. I don't know. I was never really sure about Soth because I'm not a big, huge Dragonlance fan. But
I've never read Dragonlance. I've never played in Dragonlance. I know nothing about Dragonlance except Lord Soth is from there.
right.
mhm. I had friends
I've
who
never
told me
really
all about
cared for Dragonlance.
Yeah. I
Oh.
have friends who told me all about Lord Soth and all about the different characters for Dragonlance and how complex and cool they are. And it sounds neat.
It's just an investment at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, my favorite thing about Lord Soth is how he escaped Ravenloft. So,
Yeah, and then they turned around and killed him right afterward.
well, that's what happens to Death Knights.
I guess so.
Right. They are
But,
there
okay.
to be slain.
Well, okay, that's another good point. Okay, I would definitely say that something like a Death Knight is on a tier that's way higher than even like an orc chieftain or something because
Yeah,
Oh,
they're-
sure.
They're just liches with swords.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're really tough.
yeah, they're really tough. I don't really see them as the stuff of random encounters. So usually you want to build a plot around a Death Knight.
I mean, even if they're a guardian of some sort, they're not your typical guardian.
Mm-mm.
Well, they're another
No.
like level of character that moves the plot.
Yeah.
They're up there with liches, elder dragons, mummy. What were they? Mummy lords.
Yeah, mummy lords. I would say that vampires in general are kind of more of a plot driver, but they kind of aren't.
It depends
Um,
on the vampire, because
yeah.
you could have say a vampire nest that you find as like a side story, or you could have Strahd.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was thinking more of Lost Caverns of Skojanth. When you get to the Igilwild's treasure room, you find her daughter, laid out on a thing for and she's dressed in all her armor and everything like that. Well, she's actually a vampire. And spoilers! No, that adventure's been out long enough. I think people could look at that one if they wanted to. But yeah, that particular villain isn't driving the plot, isn't behind all the stuff that's going on, or anything.
No,
she's
a thug.
Yeah, basically, she's just a high level thug.
That's what I was like the nest of vampires you find as a side story type vampire.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, if you're going to talk vampires, Buffy's going to come up. There's the scrub vampire she wipes out throughout the show, and then there's the master.
Yeah, or like Angel or Spike and all that.
Yeah, the ones that move the plot versus the minions.
Mhm.
Right.
You can have an orc move the plot. You just need to build a powerful orc.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I guess
Salvatore
you
did it.
Yeah, and you could do it with even Dragonlance had that. They had a recurring orc villain who what was it? I don't know if it was an orc. It was
No,
was
there are
a-
no orcs in Dragonlance.
I think
No,
it was
what's
a
his-
goblin or something.
Drake,
Few
wasn't
Master
it one of
Toad.
those draconic guys.
Yeah, they had Draconians to replace basically
Draconians?
all their.
They did, but they also had a
Humanoids.
guy named Few Master Toad, and I forget what his race was, but he.
Oh, he might have been a lizard man or something.
No,
like
he
that.
was. He was some sort of. He seemed like he was a goblinoid of some kind, but he was a lower level flunky, but
Mhm, mhm.
but he was. He showed up several times throughout all the
The
books.
Hobgoblin.
And Hobgoblin, was he that?
Hobgoblin.
Yeah, I just looked them up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, he was just a fat hobgoblin who kind of kept moving the plot. He was a reoccurring villain. And I guess that's another thing too. You don't necessarily have to have a recurring villain be, like an ultra tier, nasty, super duper powerful. Sometimes it's just like a little joke villain that keeps showing up all the time.
I remember I ran a campaign. When I was running Pathfinder, I ran Wrath of the Righteous, the thing that
Mhm.
got me to quit Pathfinder. And I had a villain just pop up every now and then that didn't even have a name. It was just like, I think it was an Asimar cultist of one of the demon lords, and they wound up hating this character. Like they just stopped doing the actual plot to hunt this person down. Because like the first 3 times they ran into her, I had her like escape.
Mhm.
And so they were not having that. So they wound up like stopping at like mid book 3 just to hunt this character down. I was like, all right, now I got to do more work. I'm already high prep. We're doing Mythic Pathfinder. Thanks,
Oh, boy.
guys.
Well, my wife ran a game where she had the boss's familiar be a thorn in our side, and it's just a familiar. It was I can't remember, one of the infernal ones.
An imp.
An imp, yes. Had an imp harass us, and whenever we got kind of close to even drawing a blade on it, it would poof out, and then we'd be like, "Oh, we must
Yeah, like-
find you."
Half the joys of being the GM is annoying your players.
Right.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, you thought you could Doombot.
Yeah, and that brings up why I put Thanos on the cover of this one is because I always saw Thanos as being like one of those great big plot driving arch villain types who could push a plot along, he was a big enough threat that it took everybody to come together to stop him
Yeah,
in
yeah.
most
In
cases.
comics, you had people like him, Galactus.
Yeah,
And it was hard to get everybody brought to bear at one time because he threw out so many fires that folks had to put out.
Yeah, and
So-
you had people like the X-Men who had their own shit to do.
Right.
uh-huh. That's
We can't save the world again. People are too busy hating us.
Yeah. And that kind of brings this kind of brings me to the World of Warcraft problem, which most people don't experience this in their campaigns, but the World of Warcraft problem to me is it's like, oh no, it's another world-ending threat. Which world-ending threat is it this year?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, well, a really long-running campaign will run into that.
Yeah, but I mean, after a while, at least for World of Warcraft, you're using the same character all the way from level 1 all the way to level 150, 200 now.
60.
Is it 160?
No, 60.
No, you go.
They folded it back down to 60.
They folded
Oh.
it back down to 60.
Yeah, with Shadowlands. Because
Huh.
Wow.
I went back at the beginning of the pandemic and I played it with my friends.
Huh. So they must have
Shadowlands came out,
recognized.
they dropped everything back down to 60 because it was at 120 before that.
Yeah, they must have recognized the same problem I did then.
Yeah, it was getting unwieldy.
Yeah, because it's just that your levels are so high that it's like you're going up against the Lich King at level 120, and it's kind of like who?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
we had him on farm.
Yeah. Yeah, I farmed the Lich King many, many times. And it's the sad thing, too, is that you should never farm an arch villain.
Well, you see, that's the problem. That's the thing. That's one of the things that comes up in an MMO, as opposed to say, a tabletop role playing game.
Right.
Because you're going to want the loot because that's what MMOs are. They're loot driven. But
Right.
if you make it only one person can get, say, Arthas's armor, what's the point?
Right.
You have millions of players, but only one person on the server can get it. Now, come on, no one's going to play.
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, obviously, TTRPGs don't run into that particular problem, but to me, there does become a case where It's like you can only throw so many world-ending plots at a regular group of players before it just begins to be like this is ridiculous.
Yeah, there needs to be a variety of different intensity levels throughout the campaign. You have some where the players get to flex on, like you beat up the orcs a few times, and then you have some bigger bosses thrown in there, and then you have, if you even want to do this, you don't have to have as part of your campaign a world-ending or world-shaping mega plot. You can have lots of smaller ones, and it can still be a really fun and satisfying.
You can make
campaign.
it more of a slice of life thing.
Yeah.
Well, not like the baristas, but yeah.
No.
Okay. I will take the. I will take the devil's advocate. I think you could actually have fun with a low-level game where you're.
Low level, sure. I mean,
yeah,
you
at
can
high
be
levels, you're not gonna. You're like, what's the point? That just becomes
Yeah.
the Forgotten Realms, where every bartender is a 20th level bard.
right,
True.
but if you're like caravan guards or you're escorting somebody across, dangerous soil, and
Or
you're
if
not
it's
really
a,
high
if
level,
it's an urban-based campaign, like
Or
take
urban.
what is it, Tolus? Tolus,
right.
the giant book. You can
Mhm.
start off as like, you all work at this inn.
Right.
Instead of you meet at the end, this is where you work. This is how you know each other.
Right.
And truthfully, I've had 7th level players who they wanted to put down roots in a city because they found it comfortable, and they decided, let's start businesses and stuff here. And of course, Pathfinder First Edition being the skill crazy game that it was, if you had like crafting and professions and all that kind of stuff, it was possible to set up your own business and stuff, and then you can shift the plot into a different kind of villain, because now you're not necessarily
Organized
worried about
crime.
yeah, you've got organized crime to deal with. You've got local lords who are, grifting and all this kind of stuff. And you can kind of change the meta plot around to where it's less, you have to leave the city and go deal with this. It's more like a case of, look, there's all kinds of criminals right here in your very backyard you can deal with.
Right.
And they're
back
high
in the
level
day,
too.
just in D&D, it wasn't really a skill run game. We would every once in a while we'd think, let's have our own bar, our own
Mhm.
tavern, and you don't need to worry about a whole lot skill wise with that. You just buy one, and you have beer. People will come.
Yeah. I have never actually seen anybody engage in domain play as far as, OSR First Edition or any of that stuff.
That's
I
because
know
you're not part of the Bro SR.
No, I mean it's not just part of the Bro SR. I mean, domain play was something that was supposed to be in there from first.
I just like to laugh at them. So
Yeah, they're fun to laugh at. But yeah, I've done
they
domain
take it
play
way
too.
too seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't know. From a domain play sort of standard, it seems to me it's like, yeah, that would be fun in its own way, but it seems like your narrative would shift a lot from what you used to do. And I'm not
it's
sure how
something
you
that
could.
everyone has to buy into. Like the DM and the players have to all be behind it.
Yeah.
I mean, that goes with any storyline in the game, but it's a lot of extra work
Mhm.
on both sides.
Yeah. And I've had players who don't want to settle down no matter what. It's like they just want to keep adventuring. And I'm just kind of like, this would be a nice place to settle down and maybe like take some time to, explore the scenery, because I have this giant city book that I would like to use.
I have wilderness survival, and by God, I'm going to use it.
Yeah. I've got several city books that I like, and like Bard's Gate or City State of the Invincible Overlord, that kind of thing. And I enjoy having just city-based adventures with city-based villains. Unfortunately,
I tend to lean towards urban adventures as well. It's easy. It's easier for me because I spent a lot of time in the city. I can kind of get the ebb and flow of a city, even if it's not a medieval city I spent time in.
Mhm.
A bit better than I could do. You're stuck out in the middle of the wilderness, and this is what we're going to deal with.
yeah. And to me, that just all the players pretty much have to buy into that, because if you tell everybody, it's like, okay, we're going to run a city-based campaign, and the villains will all be city-side, corrupt officials, thieves guilds, and assassins guilds, and
But even then, you could always leave the city
criminal.
for like a little bit. You could do an arc where you like go deal with something in the forest.
Yeah.
Well, sure, just to find exotic components for something.
Mhm.
That's always a good excuse to leave.
Yeah, that is. And that presents different kinds of challenges, different kinds of villains. And I will honestly, I'll lump monster, like critter monsters, into the villains categories. Like, yeah, okay, I understand that, a carrion crawler isn't necessarily, like thinking of ways to, kill your entire family at night. But
Well, they're pretty much mindless, so they just fall under the mooks or the minions.
yeah, but they're still a villain of a sort because it's still something you have to
Well,
deal with while you're in a
there's a
dungeon.
difference between a villain and an antagonist.
Yeah. Okay.
They'd just be closer to an antagonist, just like this. Just because you're the hero doesn't mean you're the protagonist, and vice versa.
True.
Right. I would consider something like a carrion crawler and its ilk, even a mimic, unless you make them smarter,
Mhm.
more part of the scenery that and an obstacle you have to overcome than really a villain.
Yeah,
No, it's not really
like
a villain class.
Villain is the big guy.
But they can be fun. I had
Mhm.
fun with the mimic during our long weekend of gaming we call Cabin Con. It was a lot of fun with how the players reacted to this mimic. It was a little overpowered, but it was easy to run away from once you figured that out.
Hey, Courtney, it's good to see you. Yeah, Mimic would be kind of like a scenic villain, a roper, something like that. Yeah, ropers are not necessarily going to attack towns and things like that.
Right.
So
They
I
don't
guess
make plots. They just
They're
when
they're
food
the
gets
spice you
nearby,
add
they
to the
eat it.
stew.
right.
Rust
So, I
monsters.
guess-
Everybody loves rust monsters.
Yeah, I love rust monsters. Rust monsters
Every
are fun.
DM loves rust monsters. That's for sure.
No, I love them as a player too because they're cute, they're funny. I mean, it's kind of like I like to keep them around as pets and stuff.
I like to run
Well-
into them when I'm playing something like a druid, not when I'm playing a fighter.
Yeah,
Well, once you know it's an actual rust monster, then they're easy to deal with because they're
Yeah,
not
I mean-
they're not vicious.
no.
No,
I had a GM.
they're just hungry animals.
I had a GM who actually attacked the party with a rust monster once, and I was just kind of like, "Why are you This thing shouldn't be attacking us. This is like, I mean, I understand it wants metal, but once we throw it some metal, it should be kind of like leaving us alone.
Sure.
Instead, this thing is like trying to bite us and all this other stuff. I'm like, this is crazy." Who is the artist behind that? I don't know. Grim gave me this. It's just a picture of Grim.
Grim just gives people pictures of himself. It's weird.
Well, I asked him for something so I could use him in the intro. But
it's a good work, I think.
yeah,
I think whoever did it was
Looks like it's
good.
just like a picture of him, and then they put it through a filter.
It could
Yeah.
be.
could be. But anyway, so yeah, I guess we need to kind of codify, what constitutes a villain, what doesn't constitute a villain. I mean, like obviously, if you run into a wild tiger, that's probably not a villain.
Now,
No.
villains either proactively or reactively move the plot forward.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So I don't know. It's like, would you consider like the random goblin war band to be
No.
a villain?
I would consider them an obstacle to get through to the actual villain.
Okay.
Maybe the local evil necromancer or something is manipulating the goblins to get them to attack more. They're
Right.
still minions.
Yeah, they're still minions, so it's actually the necromancer that's the villain.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't just throw. Oh, this is the villain. I mean, you could do monster of the week, but that's closer to something. That would be more of a World of Darkness type thing.
Yeah,
Especially
kind of.
with, like Hunter.
Hunter's definitely more geared towards that, and then there's vampire, where everybody's the villain.
Yeah, that was the point of Vampire.
Yeah, don't worry. Yeah, deities is villain. Yeah, Orcus, Loth, Vecna, they're so far above it all. Yeah, they're super villains. They're like arch villains. They're mega, like I said, world-ending type
Yeah, but
villains.
when you get to things like that, like Orcus, well, no, not Orcus, because Orcus has stats, but stuff
Yeah.
like Loth, Vecna, Cyric, they're just walking GM fiat.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're there to be thwarted, not killed.
You slow them down, you don't stop them.
well, Pathfinder had stats for Cthulhu, and it's kind of like,
Yeah, but did you actually read the stats? I mean, even Call of Cthulhu had stats for Cthulhu. You couldn't kill
Yeah.
it.
yeah, you couldn't really kill it. So, like, how much, and that thing is definitely a villain. But I don't know. I always wondered about that. Is Cthulhu really a villain, or is he just kind of like,
As a human, yes, Cthulhu's a villain.
yeah, But I mean, in his own narrative, Cthulhu is so far above and so far removed from the concerns
isn't
of
one of the
people.
elder gods. He knows what he's doing.
He does. He has more minions and stuff that do villainous things, though. He himself really doesn't, get
'Cause
involved.
He's asleep.
Usually, yeah. Except
And
for
if he
those
does,
short
if
times
he
he
does
wakes
wake up, a boat can take him out. So it's not really a big deal.
Yeah,
And that was like a 1920s boat. We have better boats now.
yeah.
Like Cthulhu versus aircraft carrier, I'm putting money on the U.S. Air Force. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I love me some Cthulhu, but 1920s technology took him out by accident.
yeah.
Well, I can't remember what you're talking about.
Call of Cthulhu, the book or the short story.
Oh,
He woke up, they hit him with a boat, and he went back to sleep.
Okay.
Well,
And that was like the 20s.
he discorporated and then he started to reform.
A 30-foot fishing schooner took him out. We have battleships now.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
I love Cthulhu, but he's not going to win.
yeah. Well, I mean, and like I said, and we have stats for him in Pathfinder, which he's pretty beefy in Pathfinder. He's a CR 25. So
I think maybe, I don't know. He might even be mythic.
I honestly always I don't think the challenge ratings things really works anyway. But that's
challenge
another.
ratings don't work at all.
That's
now,
another.
sometimes they're inaccurate low in the low end, and sometimes they're inaccurate in the high
Certain
end.
things just break the CR.
Yeah.
Like dragons break the CR rating completely.
Mm-hmm. Now, Dragon is definitely a villain. I mean, even the stupid white ones are smart enough to be a villain that can move the plot along for the most part. Although they're
Cthulhu
usually
is
the
CR30.
center of the plots, huh?
Cthulhu is CR 30.
What is?
Cthulhu. I just checked it.
He's a what?
He's CR 30.
CR 30? Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds about right. I think he's like one of the highest CRs in the whole game.
Well,
But,
until you get into the mythic stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think he is mythic rated, isn't he?
I'm looking at his stats now. He's not.
He's
He doesn't
not?
have a mythic rating.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't kill him though. So what's the point? Oh no, he does have mythic. Yeah, so he's mythic, but they don't give him a mythic rank.
Yeah. That's what I thought. Because I seem to remember that. I mean, it's been a while since I've looked at Cthulhu. Obviously, I've never thrown Cthulhu at a party because it's like, why?
If you need something that can conceivably fight a CR 30,
Wow.
especially once mythic is involved. I mean, like I was saying, when I ran Wrath of the Righteous, I had the sorcerer doing 1,500 points of damage in like swift action.
So the other thing too is like how ruthless should a villain be? I mean, it's like, okay, it's easy to throw a villain at the players that is way too powerful for them, that they can't handle, or that unexpectedly they can't handle, either bad dice rolls, bad planning, or they just get caught out and you like overestimated the party's strength, or they used too much of their stuff before they actually got to the encounter. At that point, it's kind of like, how ruthless should your villain be? I mean, should your villain just go ahead and just say, you know what, just kill them all?
It depends on the villain.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many stories where where the villain meets the protagonist early on and doesn't kill them for whatever reason, and then later on they'll say, "I should have killed you the first time I saw you."
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, it depends on not only the villain; it also depends on the story you're working on.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole "I should have killed you the first time I met you." That would be more of a sword and sorcery, swashbuckling type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that even goes all the way to westerns.
Yeah,
Because how many times did
leave Clint Eastwood, dead in the desert? He comes back.
Right.
Well, not even Clint Eastwood. I mean, I was watching Forsaken last night, which great movie if you haven't seen it, by the way, from 2014 with Kiefer Sutherland.
I think.
Oh, I'm thinking of something
Westerns.
else.
I think westerns. Clint Eastwood's one of the first names that pop in my head.
I'm thinking Unforgiven.
Yeah, Unforgiven's good too. But there's a similar vein to that. Okay, but here's what happens. Kiefer Sutherland is this, Civil War veteran, ex kind of, badass who comes back to town, and there's this greedy land baron type dude who's all set up. He's got a bar, he's got a bunch of thugs and everything like that. And the thugs kind of like meet Kiefer Sutherland early on, and they, talk trash to him and that sort of stuff, but they kind of leave him alone, and they have several encounters with Kiefer throughout the entire show, or throughout the entire movie. And eventually they push him to the point where, you know, he straps his guns back on and goes on a killing spree and kills them all. And that's kind of a case of where it's like, okay, should that villain have, you know, eliminated that threat before it became a threat, or, you know?
Well, yeah,
In retrospect,
yeah, he should have, but hindsight's 2020.
yeah.
But like I said, that depends on, more specifically, the genre than anything else. Because, like I said, swashbuckling westerns, sword and sorcery, the villains are, you know, overconfident. They'll leave the hero alive. But if you're doing something where it's more of a darker, you know, vein, like say, let's just go with Warhammer fantasy roleplay, the villains aren't going to leave you alive.
No, and especially if there's something like Dark Elves, they'll leave you alive. You'll wish they didn't.
Yeah, it depends on the genre you're working in.
You might be left alive long enough to become their food, and they're just keeping you fresh. So you might have a chance to escape or something. But,
which kind of leads me to something like Kringe, where you're a little bit more specialized in than I am. But in Shadow of the Demon Lord, how are villains handled in that one?
It's a kind of a mix. I mean, there's the big villains, you know, like I forget the Witch King. There's the Orc on the throne. These are the big villains. It's your standard published campaign setting. There's going to be high level threats, low level threats. It's all over the place. Just think of it as, you know, Warhammer meets D&D.
Yeah, but it's an overall darker tone, grimmer tone to that system.
The world is going to die.
Yeah,
you're not going to save it.
Oh, okay.
The shadow of the Demon Lord has fallen on the earth. On Earth, you're going to lose. It's just, how do you lose? I think it's grimdark done very well.
Is it like the midnight setting from way back?
Evil didn't win yet,
but it's
Evil
kind
hasn't won. It's going to.
Okay.
Because once the Demon Lord wakes up, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Or if the dragon wakes up, the world is dying. It's just, what do you do with the last flames? How do you want to burn out?
I guess that's almost the same with Dark Suns too, because that world is dying. Although there is a little bit of hope presented, because, you know, you have the preservers and all that stuff.
Yeah, if you murder all the defilers and have the preservers go around. Yeah.
And even Shadow of the Demon Lord, that's just a published setting. You could use the system to run whatever you want. I mean, yeah, I could play D&D in Greyhawk, but I could also make my own setting.
Oh yeah, anybody can make their own setting, of course.
Yeah, you could do the same thing with Shadow.
Where you can have some hope, kind of.
Yeah, you could do Noble Brand with it. I mean, you're still going to have spells. Some of the spells, you just take out some of the spells from Shadow, but you can still do Noble Bright. So I guess releasing one that's less rated R. So.
I like the rated R one. I mean, I honestly, I
understand
like
why he's doing
like
it. Yeah, so do I. But I understand why he's releasing a cleaned up rules system.
Yeah, and that kind of gets into a gray area too. Max over on Legion of Myths channel talks about this all the time. That, you know, something that's been lost from the beginning of you know, the first D&D books to present day is that the clear-cut definition of good versus evil and that sort of thing is, the line has kind of been blurred to the point now where, you know, 5th edition, of course, is taking out alignments entirely.
You don't, taking out alignment isn't the problem. It's you can still have, these are clearly the bad guys and they do bad things, and the good guys are going to come and defeat the bad guys, or they're going to try. You can still do that without a codified alignment system.
Right.
They're even taking out that particular aspect of heroic play, because it's all shades of gray.
Well, yeah, you'd have to take out alignment if you want to do shades of gray. And you can't do shades of gray with an objective alignment system.
Correct.
And I mean, okay, in a shades of gray thing, it's kind of like, well, are the villains still really villainous? Because, you know, like I said, they have backstories. They have, you know, people who care about them and love them.
Because, you know, they're still, you know, darker shades of gray.
They're the darker shades of gray. So
and
how should you respond
really good
to
shades
those?
of gray? Look at the Black Company. The villains are villains.
They are the villains.
I mean, the heroes aren't exactly heroes, but they're not the villains. But the issue with D&D is it's objective. I could point at a demon and say that is pure chaos and evil.
Yeah.
You can't do Shades of Grey with that.
True. And that's a good point there too. Is like I recently picked up Chromatic Dungeons, which whatever you think about, the author's politics, etc.
Was that the one with the like the traits?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the one with the traits where they don't call barbarians barbarians, they call them berserkers. Because barbarian is a pejorative, and they don't call races, they call them, heritages.
I have no issue with any of that.
Nah.
I really don't. I don't
is what it
care if a barbarian's not called a barbarian. As long as I have a big axe and hit something, fine.
Right. I don't mind what they call them necessarily. It's just when they go on and say because of the problematic words of the past, that's when I do my eye rolling.
I've already said my piece on like them calling them berserkers instead of barbarians. D&D barbarian is a berserker.
Mm-hmm.
And a barbarian does have a historical meaning. The word barbarian did have a historical meaning.
Sure.
It was anybody who wasn't from Greece.
Right.
So I can see why they changed it, but for modern day, no, it's kind of stupid. Call it what you want. It has elements.
Hey, Randy. All right, yeah, catch us on the rewind. Okay, but in that same book, okay, they break down all of their stuff in the bestiary to like dinosaurs, animals, or beasts, and then they have all their demons and stuff in a separate category. Those things have concrete alignments. But then they get to like humanoids, which are, orcs, lizard men, all that kind of stuff. Those don't have alignments built into them.
I'd have no issues with that.
Yeah, because demons, things from the infernal realm, or you could even say from the angelic realm, they are embodiments of those forces and those philosophies. Humans are not, and I can see extrapolating that to all sorts of humanoids as well.
Yeah, I mean, just coming from me as someone who doesn't use alignment in his games when he runs them, I got rid of it years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see an issue with if you want to make all your orcs are chaotic evil, fine. Go ahead, do what you want. I'm not going to. I don't care what you do. It's your table, not mine.
Yep.
Okay. And here's another good villain type. There's the villain who is kind of like either the unwitting villain or the villain who is not normally a villain but is being controlled to be a villain. And my best example of that is from Record of Lodoss, or not from Record of, but from oh god, my brain just farted. Excuse me. Escaflowne. From Vision of Escaflowne, the anime. There is a character in there named Delandu, who is supposed to be a male. He's like totally insane, evil, will do anything to hurt the main characters in the story, that sort of thing. By the end of the series, you find out he's actually a princess who is being controlled by, the evil forces and all this sort of stuff. And if they had killed him at any point in the story, that would have killed a major good NPC who was just being used. And the sad thing is he's such a good villain, and it's like, I really wanted him to die throughout the entire series. I kept hoping, he's like, okay, when are they going to kill Delandu? Please, somebody kill Delandu. Please kill this guy. Please kill him. Please kill him.
I mean, that's a mark of a good villain, is you want them to be punished.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's kind of like that's a villain who really isn't responsible for their own actions.
I mean, is that little wrinkle kind of a end of plot twist that you find out later, or is that something that's dropped kind of bird crumbs?
It's a redemption arc.
Breadcrumbs. Redemptions are fine.
Well, is it even a redemption arc? Because apparently, as her true self, that princess had no idea what was going on. She was totally innocent, did not know anything that was going on.
I guess freed her. I've never seen the thing. I don't know. When they freed her, did she find out all the stuff she did as a villain?
They don't know. They don't go into it in the story.
But let's assume she did. She'd still have to live with what she did.
Yeah.
I don't know how villainous this villain was.
She was villainous.
So yeah, she'd have to live with the fact that I may not have had full control, but I'm the one that killed these people.
I
mean, that's a complex thing to work with.
So how do you work that into a TTRPG, though? the interesting thing.
You'd have to plan it out long term,
Mm-hmm.
and about halfway through, have them switch over. I guess.
Or
It's
have the
Yeah,
PCs do something that
it's the
switches
Green
them.
Ranger from Power Rangers.
I don't know that one.
He started out as a villain and then became a hero.
Oh, I didn't know
Well,
that.
you still are going to need some PC adoption of this, because some players might just say, "I don't care. You
Yep.
did bad things. I'm chopping your head off."
Mhm.
And
It happens.
and that's and you know, you don't want too bloodthirsty of PCs. I guess depends on your table and
Yeah,
your
you
sensibilities.
couldn't run it with every group, but I would.
Right.
If you're going to pull something like that, like I said, that's a complex story arc you're working with. You
Oh, and
have
that
to
brings
know
up
your
another good.
players, and you have to tell them, like, look, there's some stuff that's going to happen. Be open with them. You don't have to hide everything from your players. Most modern players, even in the 70s, were able to understand, okay, player knowledge and character knowledge.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like Farscape. So Scorpius was a really evil dude.
Yeah.
And then at some point they made him more sympathetic. He didn't stop being an evil dude, really, but they
He was just a token evil teammate.
yeah. And
Look at Spike from Buffy.
Yeah, Spike
right.
from Buffy is a
so
good
they
example.
had to, they had to harbor him a bit, and everybody wanted to kill him, but they found out that it was a bad idea to. But
Yeah, you have to have a reason why they don't just kill him out of hand.
right.
Like maybe there's a curse or something that his death will actually be the thing that unleashes like the thing the villain is trying to do. But the villain isn't the one that can kill him, so he mind controlled them and then sent them after the heroes.
Yeah, and that's a good point to bring up too. You have to have a party or a group of players that is willing to buy into that.
Right. And in that show, they did that twice. They did that with Scorpius, and they did that with I can't remember his name now. The his very first in that show, the very first guy who was chasing him across the galaxy because he killed his brother. I can't remember his name, but yeah, Krace. So had two different. With Krace, it was an actual redemption arc. With Scorpius, it was just, well, we can't kill him because reasons. He was not a good guy.
Uh-huh.
I haven't seen Farscape.
I haven't either.
So I don't remember any of this. I'm just going to take your word on it.
I've heard of Scorpius, but okay, I'll give you an example of a table where they weren't buying into that, and it's my table actually. Many years ago, I ran a published adventure where all of the PCs in the village, or all the NPCs in the village, are basically being mind controlled by this this bell that's going off, from the church, and it's like some kind of evil spell, and evil villain dude is, got the spell going, and once the bells are ringing, all the NPCs the villagers are all essentially threats to the PCs.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So the PCs basically have to make their way through this town full of formerly friendly NPCs who now want to kill them because they're being basically, overridden by the villain.
Sounds a little bit like a Star Trek episode I'm remembering from the old days, where when the town clock, when they went to a planet, it was kind of a weird human-looking settlement, but there was a clock bell that went off, and everybody turned evil after that, for a while, and then it rung again, and they were like, "Oh, I guess we're good now."
Or anytime
Yeah.
Starro shows up in DC Comics.
Yeah, Starro, yeah.
I
any
don't know
yeah.
Starro.
Starro is a starfish that can control minds, and if he gets you, you're under his control. So he can get the heroes, and then you have to fight, your friends.
Yeah. Now, okay, in the case of my game, the PCs just did not give a shit. They mowed through townspeople like they were, mowing down grass.
Well, it happens.
I know, and I kept trying to say, guys, okay, these are townsfolk who were friendly to you, like just a few hours before they were, and our one of our PCs just straight up said, you know what, I don't care who they are, because now they're bad guys as far as I'm concerned.
Well, yeah, that's you. You were trying to do Shades of Grey in a black and white game.
Yeah, Well, I mean, I wasn't. That was what the story called for. That was what I should say the story, the module.
Well, I'm not.
called
I
for.
wasn't saying you specifically. I was just, that's,
Yeah.
Well, I can see pulling that off with the right group when the group says, especially if there's some obvious, oh, they're being controlled thing going on. If they're friendly, been friendly for months, and all of a sudden, their eyes turn red after the bell goes off, and now they're all acting shady and weird. You have to figure out. You might be forced to kill if they are given certain circumstances, but at some point you're going to be like, oh, we need to figure out what's going on and stop it so these villagers go back to normal. You don't necessarily have to kill them all, but you might be forced to kill a few depending on circumstances.
Well, these PCs did not care. They were they were wading through them like grass.
you have to
just
know
to get
your group if you're going to pull something like that.
Yeah. And when I play, I'm always not always, but I tend to, if I can figure out a way around the encounter and still be successful, if there's a way to do that, parlay or just sneak, I'll do that too. All depends, but it depends on what's going on.
It also depends on the character you're playing.
Yeah.
Like if you're playing the sneaky thief, he's not going to just murder everything. But if you're playing the barbarian, he just might.
Right. I always want to deal with everything head on. If I'm playing a wizard, I want to be more cautious. Yeah.
But should you feel good about killing your threats, your villains, your bad guys, all that sort of stuff? Should you feel bad about it?
You should. 100%. You should feel good. I
always
beat him. As a player, that's what the villain is for.
Okay.
Villain is for killing.
Villain is for killing.
I mean, I love me a good redemption arc, but not every villain needs a redemption arc.
Right.
I agree. Do you think there's too much of the redemption arc stuff going on these days? Because it kind of seems to me like every single, they want you to treat every single individual goblin like a little character with their own thoughts and wishes and beliefs, and
that's just the prevalence of more storytelling being injected into RPGs.
Right.
I mean, RPGs started out, growing from war games. There really wasn't much story. It's like my dudes are now fighting his dudes. Why? This is the army I brought.
Right.
So there really wasn't a lot of story to begin with. But as you go, especially after the '90s with World of Darkness making storytelling the big thing, this is what happens. The hobby grows and evolves.
Well, I would say that, except for the fact that I know for a fact that Arneson, way back when he was running Blackmore, one of his PCs was actually playing a full-on vampire. And that character, from what I understand, wasn't necessarily a good dude, but wasn't necessarily a bad dude. I mean, he was a person playing a regular PC character
who became a vampire. Yeah, evil was always in the player's handbook.
Yeah, evil was always in the player's handbook.
Play chaotic evil. They said you probably shouldn't, but they never straight out said don't play.
Yeah, the implied thing was to play the characters who are fighting the monsters, not to be the monsters. But a lot of people still kind of like doing that.
Yeah, I mean, evil campaigns have been a thing since the beginning.
Yeah.
Pop, so you're just set up to feel guilt the whole time? I hope not.
That's just called Catholicism, the role-playing game.
I hope not.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is I really don't want to feel guilty about, slaughtering an entire, group of goblins.
Well, you're not going to be made to feel guilty at your table. You're going to be made to feel guilty, or there's someone's going to try. If you post on Twitter, hey, we just slaughtered an entire village of goblins because they were eating everybody. And then someone will come on there and say, oh, that's so colonial, or some such.
That's the thing. I know you haven't seen Goblin Slayer. You really need to. But the Goblin Slayer manga and movies, well, I should say anime, kind of established from the very first episode that goblins were thoroughly evil, to the point where even the main hero in the very first episode, he finds a bunch of goblin children in the back of a cave, and he proceeds to slaughter all of them, despite the fact that, the cleric who is, just been rescued by the Goblin Slayer, is like, why are you doing that? That's so horrifying. And he just coldly tells her, is like, every single one of these that you let grow up are going to learn from this how to get better at it, and will go on to do horrible things. And keep in mind they establish in that very first video too that goblins are just horrifying because what they do is they take human females to reproduce with.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean
ew.
that's just it's Goblin Slayer established that goblins are pure evil.
right.
Yeah.
It's like the sun is yellow.
Yes.
Goblins are evil. I mean,
Birds
Right.
fly, water is wet. Goblins
Yeah,
and Goblin
yeah.
Slayer are evil.
if you don't
And
have that
It's
conceit in
objective.
your game, then you do different things. But if the conceit is that humanoids like goblins and orcs and whatnot are essentially evil, then they are there for you to have roadblocks from you to get from A to B, and they are there to get killed because they are evil.
They're XP on the hoof.
Justice for goblins. Okay, and that brings up a different kind of villain too. Okay, like the xenomorphs from Aliens. Okay, nobody feels bad about the Marines going through and just blowing through an entire hive full of those things for some
Yeah.
reason.
Give Twitter time, but yes, no one
I
does.
mean, I know some people on Twitter.
Really? Are you serious?
Not that they're Xenomorph fans, but I wouldn't say they feel sorry for the Xenomorph.
Okay, I mean, because there's a difference between being fans. I mean, it's like it's cool
It's like-
to enjoy
it's like
a
a-
villain.
Alien, the first Alien was just a slasher film.
Yeah.
At a certain point, we all rooted for Jason. But
Yeah,
you know Jason is going to lose in the end.
Yeah,
It's just escapism.
it is. That's escapism. But I mean, as far as like a hive of horrible monster type things that do, that their species, even though it uses people to reproduce and everything like that, it's like, okay, well, let's take a look at the best D&D example of that. Mind flayers, who don't
Mind
have
flayers are
alignments
evil.
anymore.
Mind flayers are evil. They require to murder and eat sentient beings. Remember what I was saying about D&D being objective?
Uh-huh.
They're evil.
Yeah. They implant their tadpoles into people's heads and turn them into mind flayers, or
Yeah,
they
that's
eat
how they
people's
reproduce.
brains, or they enslave other species to do their bidding.
Mind slayers are evil.
Yeah, they do all the evil things. They do every evil thing in the book.
Yeah, they do every single evil things, and yet somehow there's people out there who don't want them to be represented as entirely and wholly evil. I'm just kind of like, you can't really have it both ways with something like that, I don't think.
Yeah, they'll say something like mind flayers should have the breadth of moral the moral breadth that humans do, and I'm like, no, why?
I mean,
Why should they? You could,
one-off
but
you could do a one-off mind flayer who
yeah,
remembers
like-
part
yeah.
of his past.
sure.
And I've seen that. I've
Yeah,
seen
a
that
one-off is fine.
in the Book of Exalted Deeds
Yeah, there was a
from
redeemed
third
mind
edition.
flayer.
Yeah, there is a redeemed mind flayer who I think she still does have to consume brains, but I think she tries to stick to just evil people.
I mean, yeah, no issue with that. I wouldn't say it's common.
No.
I
It
mean,
would
give
be
it time.
rare if not.
Give it time. We'll have a drist of mind flayers, and everyone will be making.
That's
mind flayers.
what I don't want to see. Is that no, these evil mind flayers were just the minority. The majority of mind flayers are all good people who all live underground and just eat the bad people.
At your table, that you don't have to do that.
Yeah. I don't want to see that. I don't, like the Drow used to be like the singular threat for evil. They were supposed to be all the
then
worst
Trist
things.
became popular, and that what happens there.
Well, I mean, and it's okay, but what made Drist cool was the fact that he was the one-off.
Yeah, but that's not how it works, especially in RPGs. A cool character comes out and it's like comics or a movie, and everyone wants to try to make this character in their game. It's just not how many when Pathfinder. Do you know how many people I know who showed up with like fucking a gunslinger named Alucard because they watched an anime?
Of course. Of course. Well, they had rules for playing not the Death Knight, but the what was the name of the evil paladin in that one? I forgot.
Anti-paladin.
In
Blackguards.
Pathfinder, no,
Blackguard,
there was
yeah.
Blackguard, and there was another name. And in Pathfinder they were anti-paladins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the very first one was called an anti-paladin as well.
Yeah.
Which I always thought was
just in the Dragon magazine. Yeah.
I really thought it was I hate, even in comics movies, I hate just the evil version of the hero.
Yeah.
And the anti-paladin was literally just a paladin flipped, and I hated that. Why would say a demon lord
pops.
Make his champion just like a paladin, but not.
Right.
Exactly.
They would
Instead of
have
just
a
being
more
something
unique-
different and interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, where
I
do
mean,
you draw the line?
Mechanically, that was the designers being lazy.
Yeah, where do you draw the line between like villainous villains and heroic villains and villains that are you're okay to feel stomping on and
Well, that just comes down to the story.
I
A
guess
lot
so.
of this is the story.
Some people do bad things that are on the low end. So they rob caravans, they steal, but they don't kill anybody. And then they may steal because they have a reason to steal because they have family that needs to eat. Maybe that's what they're doing. But some folks or they just like the thrill of stealing. So they don't kill anybody.
Yeah,
So
it's
fine.
Catwoman versus the Joker.
Right. And then you have folks that are not above killing, but may be above rape or some other really heinous things.
Or like Leon, no women, no children.
Right. So you'll kill the foe that's in front of you, trying to get in between you and your goal, but you won't just go out of your way to murder somebody that's just on the side of the road and not bothering anybody. And then you got people who will do that, and because they like killing.
Okay, and that brings up an interesting point. Recently, RPG Pundit just released Sword and Caravan, which is really good book, by the way. I totally recommend it. It's great writing. But he also it can be combined with his Lion and Dragon game, which is historical medieval role playing, which is there aren't really any critters and stuff like that to fight. I mean, there is here and there, but they're like very rare. For the most part, you're dealing with other people who are doing bad things, cultists and stuff like that. But okay, now he's introduced this new wrinkle with Sword and Caravan, so now we have actual, people of a different faith to yours. And it's like, okay, now at what point do these people become villains and you become the good guys, etc.? Because now we're dealing with like a little bit more of a sticky subject, I think.
Perhaps, yeah. I mean,
I'm still going to stick with the alignment making it objective. As long as he has the D&D alignment system, it's objective.
Yeah, because different religion, if they're still good guys or they're still not bad guys, then who cares? They can do their thing, and it doesn't bother me as a PC or whatever.
I mean, if you want to do like the Crusades, the RPG, you can't have an alignment system.
Almost, pretty much, yeah. But
it depends on if you're just taking the Crusades in a more general theme, but you're really assigning one side the bad side.
And that's where it gets sticky, especially if you're basing it on the Crusades, because
if you're using the historical elements and just as a basis, but not really emulating it correctly or completely. You're just saying there's going to be a crusade, and it's going to be something like this, but I'm going to do it in this fashion, and you're going to have this religious sect that is not very good, and they acquire things through murder and
if you're going to base a game on the Crusades, you have to take very careful steps to not say the evil ones are clearly based on Catholicism or Islam. You can't do that.
No. You can't, and
I'm an asshole to people, but I'm not a dick.
Yeah.
I'm not going to just demonize an entire group of real people.
No, exactly, and that
would
make it difficult. Yeah, that would make it hard, I think, for anybody. And then the fact is, it's like I think the other part of it that makes it rough is the fact that every single person you're killing, whether you're playing a Muslim or a Crusader or whatever. That other person you're killing definitely had a family and people who cared about them.
At a certain point, like they're still, just the mindless guys you're going to slay. I mean, first level in other games, you do fight like bandits. The bandit has family. I don't care.
Yeah.
But the thing is, though, what's interesting is even historically, you can find that there are people who are definitely still villainous, despite the fact that they are real people with lives and that are documented very heavily. Like, and my main example would be Raymond de Chatillon, who was a Crusader knight who was just about as bad as they came for the most part.
Yeah, there were good guys and bad guys on both sides.
Yeah, there were.
There also some of the stuff you're going to be putting modern morality.
And
on
that's kind of
things that happen then. It's a
Yeah.
sticky subject if you're using real people.
Yeah, I think the
is.
best thing to do is to not do that. The
Yeah,
best
yeah.
thing is
Don't
we're
use real
playing
people.
games.
Uh-huh.
So on some level, don't want to necessarily use the word cartoonish, but it's going to be a little bit like that because it's a game. It's not representing the real world. The
Mhm.
more you try to emulate the real world morality, and it's definitely real world situations,
Mhm.
the less of a game it is to me. And
Yeah,
nothing I
especially
want
once you
to
start
nothing I
putting
want
the
to get
real
into.
world. And look what happened to White Wolf a few years ago with their misstep they made with like vampires in Bosnia.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah, and if you're going to do medieval authentic, which is what a lot of what
Pundit.
Pundit does, I don't think that he might. I haven't read Lion and Dragon yet,
Mhm.
but so you know more than I do. It's not. I think the best way to do that would be not to call them those things.
Yeah,
but
but
maybe
Pundit
just
would.
yeah, probably. But
Well, I mean, Sword and Caravan makes it. Sword and Caravan gives you a lot of options and ideas, so it's not all just necessarily go slay this person, that person. Because he's got rules for setting up trading caravans and that kind of thing like that. And of course, even if the meta plot of your game, as far as a medieval authentic, is okay, you're a caravaneer going from one side of the Silk Road to the other, you're going to encounter bandits,
Am I
and things
supposed
like
to ask
that.
every bandit if they're an orphan, so I don't have? I
Yeah.
forget if they have like a mom
Yeah.
that's gonna miss them. No, they're bandits.
Exactly.
They're set up as the roadblock for us to get through, so we can get to the other end of the Silk Road.
Yeah.
bandits want to take your stuff and probably kill you. So
No, but please, sir. No, I have
the
a
main
family.
reason I became an adventurer is because I didn't have stuff and I want it. I'm not letting them take my stuff.
right.
Yeah. There's that. Okay. So yeah, I think villains are a really interesting complexity to role playing games. They don't necessarily have to be all the same. They don't necessarily all have to be arch villains. They don't have to be all complex with feelings and redemption arcs and all this kind of stuff like that. I think you can still have plenty of bad guys that you feel good about killing because they needed killing for whatever reason.
Yeah, but you have to remember you're also playing, for the most part, heroes.
Yeah.
And a hero is judged by the quality of his enemies.
True.
There's a reason Batman is so popular, because he has really good villains. I'm not taking anything from Batman, but he has one of the best rogues galleries in modern culture.
Oh, sure.
Oh yeah. Okay, now that is another interesting wrinkle. Let's say you are in a group that doesn't want to kill all the bad guys. Let's say, they are loaded up with spells and weapons and things like that are either non-lethal or they know how to pull their blows enough to where, if they get an opponent down to like 0 hit points or in negatives or whatever, they don't necessarily kill. They just, bind their wounds, tie them up or whatever like that, and then take them into town. How is that for a change, you think?
It's going to get, with the number of people that are creatures that the PCs face, they're going to need a giant prison.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, think about I'm not even going to say kill. The number of enemies that your standard PC group, just say from level 1 to 5, will face.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could do it. I see no issue if that's what the group wants to do. A lot of what you're talking about, T-Shirt, isn't really villainy. It's just how would the table interact with this idea?
Well, okay, at its heart, that is kind of like the nature of TTRPG villainy. It's like, unless your characters are playing the villains, in which case,
have fun. Just set some ground rules if you're going to do an evil campaign. Like, I've ran evil campaigns that worked, and I've ran evil campaigns that failed. I mean, ground rules, no PvP.
Yeah.
And the villains need something to work for.
Yeah.
Well, towards.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen, a lot of villain campaigns will devolve into PvP. Although we did have one case where the villains were so villainous and so horrible that the GM actually just decided this is just too much for me. I can't handle it anymore.
Yeah, you have to know what you're getting into. Usually,
Yeah.
when I run a villainous campaign, and if alignment is there, I'll say no chaotic evil.
But
I mean, neutral evil and lawful evil can work. Chaotic evil. Do you really want the Joker on your team?
well, no, you could have chaotic evil. The thing is, you just have to find a way to rein him in. Either
Do
keep
you
him
really
on a
want the
leash or
Joker
something.
on your team? I wouldn't.
No.
If I was a villain, no, I wouldn't want the Joker on my team.
No, because not only is he, unpredictable,
Evil, he's chaotic.
he wants to be the boss.
Yeah.
I mean, I can work with the Riddler. I'm not going to work with the Joker.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if we've totally explored this topic. There's probably some angles we hadn't come at or thought of, or some different
Well, we
ways.
can
but
always do a villains part too. I mean, that's
Yeah,
the
we
good
could always
thing
do
about
villains part
they come
two.
back.
That would be fun.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see, like if I'm still around in 5 or 6 years to see if the pendulum has shifted the other direction, and I don't know, maybe I don't know. It's kind of like the justice system. The justice system, favors death penalty in some years, and then all of a sudden it swings back the other way, and where it's like, oh, let's not do the death penalty anymore. So
I'm not going to touch that.
nobody should touch that. That's an area where
Yeah, that's beyond the scope of us, spurging out about D&D.
True.
So yeah, I see what you're saying though. This trend of softening the villains probably could swing back the other way to a better place.
Yeah.
But then it doesn't necessarily need to. It's just the big fish, Paizo and Watsy that are kind of doing that, and then Twitter weirdos.
Yeah.
Your table, we are free at our table. Of all
That's
that.
the nice thing. We are always free at our own tables to do whatever we want to, so we
That's
can
the
play
strength
it.
of tabletop role-playing games.
Yeah.
Yep.
I agree.
The decentralized nature of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, all right, guys. Thank you all for joining me today, and
It was a pleasure as always.
hey,
Thank you for inviting me.
hey, no problem. I love having you guys on. I mean, because otherwise I'd be sitting here and discussing these things into oblivion because I had nobody to discuss it with, including not too many people watching today. I don't know. Maybe everybody's busy today, or
It's also 11:20 in the morning
true.
on a Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, normally, we get a few people, but
Hopefully, your view count after the fact is decent.
yeah, I hope so. All right, guys. Well, thanks for hanging out with me, and Joe, if you ever want me back on your channel, just let me know. I'm always available,
Sure
or
thing.
usually available.
Yeah,
All right.
I'll pass it along to Randy.
All right, and you might consider Kringay too. He's, as you can tell, he's pretty sharp.
Just it helps if I know the subject about 10 minutes before, longer than 10 minutes before I get pulled into the stream, though.
Hey, I think you guys did fine, and I like it to be more of a spontaneous discussion because it's like,
Yeah, but I also like to know the subject.
okay, good point.
I don't take notes, but I like to formulate my thoughts.
Yeah, Grim would have probably done like extensive note taking and research and everything before he got onto the show. But
I'm more true neutral than lawful, whatever.
all right, well, hopefully next week Grim be back with us, and and I don't mind inviting you guys back and for that one, of course.
All right,
Awesome.
if I'm available too, I'll be there.
All right,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, have
Y'all
a good
take
night.
care.
Have a good day, guys.
all right.
Take it easy.
Dungeons and Dragons ride!